Hi, Sam.
Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can. Yep.
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for
Hi,
doing this.
Marshall.
Hey there. How's everybody doing today?
Hey, how are you, Marshall? We have Virginia in the house. We have Texas in the house. We have Minnesota. We have Tennessee. We have Virginia. This is great. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And
We have
Chicago.
Myra in the house, our teacher.
And Chicago.
Oh,
Hey.
Illinois. Early and sorry. I was trying to think where you were from. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Amy. Michigan is here.
Michigan is in the house.
There's more Illinois, and here comes Iowa and Colorado. This is great. You people are so wonderful, giving up your afternoon.
We're hoping to learn a lot.
I think that you will. I think this is going to be really great for people. Wow. Illinois, you are really here today. I love it.
So Linda, how are
Yes. Fine.
you? And Hessa, how are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
So great. So Linda will be the host. Is that, and then you'll depart, and then Hessa stays with me, or she also departs?
Yes, she's going to stay.
Okay,
Okay.
great. So then we'll try to break at 2:45, and then reconvene again at 3 o'clock. So that allows that group like Linda who goes into the software.
Gives
So
people-
is my sound okay?
Yes.
Yes, you sound good.
Great. So these headphones hopefully will stick around for the hour and a half. Can we try my presentation just for a second, see if I have screen?
Sure, please do. Well,
There
hi,
it
we're
is.
doing that. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming today. This is going to be a really, a lot of times we do our training on things like marketing and stuff, but this is really going to help you with how your chapters should be running. Things like boards and forms and those things that tend to trip you up if you don't always feel certain about what you're doing. So this is going to be great for everyone. So I'm really glad you're here. It's 2:01, so I'm not sure, Jairo, what you're planning to do in terms of people identifying themselves. It would probably take a while to introduce everyone, but what I'll do first is just say, I'm Linda, I am the chapters director, and I'm assisted here by Hessa, who is our administrative assistant, and she actually has the credentials for this meeting because I double scheduled myself and I have to go out for a meeting. I think Isaac will be jumping out too, because we are evaluating software that chapters may use in the next couple of years to do grassroots advocacy. So that's what we're jumping out for a short time. But Jairo will be here with you and we'll tell you about how the agenda is going to run today. But I just wanted to introduce Jairo in case you don't already know him from your work in chapters. So Jairo Gonzalez is the president of the New Jersey Composting Council, and we are fortunate he's on the chapter advisory committee, and he also is an expert in business development of organizations. He has been working for more than 18 years in various capacities and I've looked on his LinkedIn, and he's done everything from being an executive producer of films to president of a global electronic payment systems company. And now he's doing business development and consulting with organics companies in New Jersey and around the country. So he started up New Jersey's chapter and formed also a foundation there and is an expert on what you need to do these kinds of things. So I think with that, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Jairo, and take it away.
Thanks, Linda. That's a nice introduction. So the participants, welcome all. You're welcome to type in your name in the chat and your organization. I also suggest that you, in your name, go to the rename on the top, those little buttons there, and you put your initials of your organization, as I just did on my name. I'm with the New Jersey Composting Council, NJCC. Yeah, okay, so here I'm gonna now share with you my screen and we'll kick off the presentation of the workshop, which by the way, was scheduled to be at the Austin show. But as I was heading to the airport, guess what? I got sick. The night before, I was feeling a little oozy. I said, better check it. And yes, it did confirm I had COVID-19, turned around, unpacked, and went to bed for a couple days. And so we're very lucky that this course went virtual. And so I have the opportunity to share my experience in this space of the nonprofit, but mostly in the area of development startups, and industry related nonprofits. And I'll go through that motion of the many nonprofits that exist and the policies that they set forward. So yeah, I've sat on many boards. I presently sit on 2 boards, the New Jersey Composting Council, a 501c6, and the New Jersey Organics Recycling Foundation, a 501c3. I've also sat on privately held New York Stock Exchange boards in my prior career, which are incredibly rigid, run by accounting programs and protocols and shareholders, which is a major component there. I am in the space of composting, and my passion started in my family's farm, when we saw that our trees and our fruits were going upside down and we couldn't figure it out. So we started analyzing soil, and all that brought the recycling, and it led one thing to the other, and then the other farms next door wanted to know, and then the mayor wanted to know, and then the governor, and then we realized that everything was interchanged. I moved to New Jersey with my family, and we quickly realized that in New Jersey, there was a very loose-ended activity. Everybody on their own, everybody duking it out with the regulators, with the legislators, and in their own business enterprise. So we quickly put together a coalition. It took a couple of months of designing, recruiting, entertaining, and we went forward and we created the council, first as a committee and eventually as a chapter, and incorporated. And I will share with you my experience in the nonprofit world, because I pointed out, I come from the private sector, and there's a lot of disciplines in there that you can learn, special fiduciary disciplines that you learn that can be applicable in the nonprofit space. Successful nonprofits today are, mega operations like Sierra Club, like Greenpeace, like USAID. These are massive corporations, and they work under the space of the nonprofits. There's also the small and the medium sized like ourselves, but we'll try to give you a feeling of how you can apply these structures. Let me see, how does this work? Okay, here it goes. So I want to leave clear to all you guys here that every single one of you might be either a mature nonprofit, as California is within our group, or North Carolina is. These are seasoned nonprofits, or the startups that we've seen in the last year or 2 years since I've been in the CAC. Those are very different, but I think they all have something in common, that we all need to be morphing. We all need to be adjusting and being flexible to adjust to the needs of the market and legislation and the regulation and so forth. So it's something. This is what we'll try to do today in the next hour and a half. We'll talk about the corporate structure. We'll talk about budget and funding. We'll talk about board dynamics and management. Now, it gets, I'll try to keep the energy high here so that you don't fall asleep. But these 3 topics are incredibly important. And then we'll take a 15 or 5-minute break. We can stick around and talk to each other. And then we'll start again with volunteers, employees, and how to apply everything we learned in the first half in your nonprofit strategy. So again, as you listen to me, I will break in these chapters and allow some questions. Raise your hand. Hisa, if you can help me when they raise their hands, send me a message. I'm not looking at the chat. I will look at it once as I do the counts. But keep in mind, I'm trying to give you my experience, and I'm trying to apply to all of you, which we have multiple diversities here and different types of corporate structures. I imagine some of you are on one side or the other side of the 501Cs. So the first thing that comes in mind if you're a startup, and even if you are a mature entity, is what do I do? Do I go with a standalone or do I seek fiscal sponsorship? So in another past life, I ran a nonprofit that was for publishing books, and we were publishing one particular book, and we didn't have the structure. So we started this debacle. Do we incorporate and do all the things that I'm going to talk about here later, or do we just go out and get a fiscal sponsorship? And a fiscal sponsorship is something that I want to start with, that because it is the easy way and quickest way into the market as you are starting your nonprofit. And it really takes down a lot of the financial barriers and a lot of this know-how that we don't know initially, that you can learn as you try and feel your new organization. So we're going to go with a fiscal sponsorship. What is it? A fiscal sponsorship involves an existing 501c3 nonprofit offering to provide its tax exemption and associated benefits to another group. So you have an idea, right? So you want to access a grant, you're a committee and you want to put together the coalition, and you have maybe a low-hanging grant from the local DEP department, and you want to access that, but you don't have the corporate structure. Maybe you want to become a chapter, but you don't have the corporate structure that they require to do. There are entities out there that are solely structured to provide these services to these startups or just project-oriented organizations who don't want to go through the filings, who don't want to go through all the motions, and most importantly, to the financials of filing. The average filing of a corporation, a nonprofit corporation in the Northeast, is between $3,000 and $5,000, subject to how complex you are. That's a lot of money for a startup. In some cases, there's no money at all. So when you're thinking about a fiscal sponsorship, there are some things you must keep in mind. That service that this entity is providing you with will charge you a fee. They will charge you a low administrative fee, which is they do all the compliance work, they do all the invoicing for you, they do all the taxes and so forth. And your job is just to specifically provide them with the paperwork, the invoicing, and the project itself, the banking account, the workers and so forth, so you can execute. But they do charge a low fee. Engage always an entity that has a history in your space. Try to look for these entities that are either environmental or, if you can, somebody in the organic space, organic waste management. They are rare, but I've seen more of them in the nonprofit space that they can, in the environmental space, they can help you get started. Find one that you can trust, preferably somebody local in the state. But it doesn't matter with virtual, with the internet, with all this new world that we live in. It doesn't matter if it's based in Hawaii. They have the reach and the know-how, because that's all they work on in trying to provide you those services. It allows you to focus on your project, as I said, a grant, maybe just a startup, to accept donations, maybe just to get your board together. But you are incorporated. You're now a full entity that can focus on the real work, which is your composting infrastructure development work or organics diversion. Most importantly, with these fiscal sponsors, have a contract. You have to have a contract. I've seen a lot of the issues related today with these relationships is they kind of, he let me do it. I'm going to be his friend. We're part of his committee. They'll be our entity. We will be here. They will be there. We can borrow their office. They can borrow our back. No, all that is good, but you must have a contract. Must have a one-page contract. Even if it's in a napkin, have a contract. Most serious organizations who provide fiscal sponsorship, they have their contracts online and they're very specific about what you have to do. And it's not that easy sometimes. You have to actually apply to work in these organizations because they don't want to have anybody in there that is goofing around or doing other activities other than what they're meant to do. So they do qualify you, quantify you, and ask you to petition, and they will approve you and so forth. So, but have a contract. Even if you're working with a local nonprofit that is willing to give you everything, have a contract. And that contract will define your fees for administrative fees, the way you handle your banking, the way you handle your commissions, the way you handle the compensations, the kickbacks, the revenues, all those activities, they're upfront defined in the contract. The pros of a fiscal sponsorship, of course, as I said, allows you to be focused on your project. Will give you credibility for the project because some of these entities, the banks will know who they are, the grant donors will know who they are. It will provide you some guidance and support. And it's easy to terminate because once the project is done, you can terminate. And it's not like, if you're a company or a corporation, in this case, a nonprofit corporation, you will need to terminate a 501c. It's not that easy. You need to write to the treasurer. You need to terminate a lot of agreements. This way, you're done. You're just out the door. You completed your book publishing, which is what I did. We were done and we went on to better and newer things. The cons are there, loss of autonomy. Some funders will not allow you to be a fiscal sponsor. I know that there are some programs in the DEP or the USDA or in the EPA that will not allow you to do sponsorships of this nature, but that's something you need to evaluate. Of course, the structures are a little loose and it limits you in the lobbying you can do in some cases. Lobbying, I mean, going to your legislator and getting the advocacy work you're doing. So let's say you don't want to do this fiscal sponsorship because whatever you want to start, you got the cash and you want to do a standalone. You want to incorporate. So at this moment, you really put on your hat of a startup mode. You are now doing what we call the NewCo. You're now creating a new organization, and for this, you got to get ready. It is a set of mind of an entrepreneur, even though it's a nonprofit, but you need to be prepared to all the things that come there. So you need a computer, you need the newspaper, you need your phone, all the things in that picture shows you that he's ready to go to do a standalone operation. So when you go to your standalone operations, you look at the different structures out there that the IRS provides you, right? This is now you're incorporating and you're going to evaluate if you want to be a 501c4, which seems to be social welfare organizations like ours, a 501c6, which is business leagues, industry associations such as ours, or you can become a 501c3, which are charitable organizations, organizations that can engage in some lobbying and can participate in some of the public policy, but they usually are created to the activity of charitable work. When looking at the 501(4)s, and we had a dilemma. We went back and forward. We didn't know what we wanted to do, but we do know one thing, that we wanted to create an industry association in the state of New Jersey. We wanted to go after the big guys, the Vermeers, the Comtex, the We Care Denali's, the waste management, the big guys, as well as cover everybody in the medium to small. And we wanted to create an association that could really represent the state of New Jersey in the legislature. And to do that, we wanted to make sure that we had all the doors open, as in compliance towards doing lobbying, which is what we do in some sort. I mean, lobbying is very expensive, but you can still be up there and testify. You can still make a phone call. You can still try to get a meeting with these legislators. So we went with the 501c6, but it has some limitations. And I know some of you are 501c6s and are trying to figure out how you can benefit for some of the things that the 501c3 has. But before we jump into that, I'd like to explain to you that if you go the path of the 50c3 versus the path of the 504 and the 4 and the 6, there are some, there's a very important exercise that has to be overcome from the beginning. And that is here for some reason. So where was I? Okay, so here, yeah. So for that, when you do the 501c3, you need to, of course, you do all your state activity, which is a state and federal incorporation that you do online, or you can do it with a pro bono attorney or with a paying attorney. You do all those filings. But the main point of becoming a 501c3 is the exemption, that tax exemption that we all go after, and that qualification that most grants are looking for. Grants today are mostly designed for 501c3s and not 501c4s or 6. Even though they're out there, they're usually designed for the 501c3s. So there's a form, the Form 1023, which is a rigorous application that requires a detailed narrative of the organization's mission and plan activities, disclosure of the organization's governing documents, financial projections, and numerous questions designed to highlight key compliance concerns. Now remember that. That is your 1023, which is a must to get that tax exemption as a 501c3. You could incorporate in the state under the Treasury with all three of them, as we pointed out here, but you will not receive your tax exemption unless you do your 1023 under the umbrella of the C3. So the 1023 comes in two formats. It comes with the long form and it comes with the short form. This presentation, I don't know if Linda wants to make it available to you, but it's available for you to get this link. But this link is where you download this 1023 and or head to the 23 and you can get the long form or the short form. We went after the long form, but some other nonprofits decide to go to the short form. And the criteria for the 1023 easy or the short forms are right here. Most important criteria of the 1023 short form, which is a 1-pager versus the 20-pager of the long form, is that you must not exceed $50,000 over the first 3 years of your incorporation. All right. Now, what I've read and what I've heard is that if for some forsaken reason you do exceed those $50,000, the IRS will get upset, and I'll leave it there. They will scrutinize you. They will probably ask you to refile your 1023. They will probably put you on a notice to terminate or to moratorium of some sort. But they're very stringent on that 1023 easy path versus the long path. So as an association, if you're going after grants, a good grant is 100,000 to be effective, or 50 grand. So you have to be very careful how you design your 3-year plan. The 1023 easy form doesn't allow you as an organization or as a startup and your original team doesn't allow you to really define your goals, because you're just filling out the form and you're not answering the questions of the long form. Therefore, you're not really going in depth to what you are heading to and what your 3-year roadmap looks like. So there they are, the risks of the IRA revoking you. Donors and foundations and other grants will be hesitant to fund NUCOs that don't have 1023. I've seen NUCOs coming in with short, easy 1023s, and they will not get the funding because they haven't yet come up with a narrative and the content of the 1023, which are budgets, board description, marketing plan. I mean, it's just a whole suite. And if there's time, I can show you that 1023 long form, which took us, and I mean us, it was a group of 2 or 3 of us putting in the content. And then of course, the attorneys that we had were buffering some of the work and saying, no, you really can't say that, Heido. Try to rephrase this so that you're a little broader and a little more whatever. Anyway, so the 1023 easy versus the long, I think the last paragraph here says it clearly. It's an important opportunity to learning the rules of governing a 501c3. You will know when you design, when you draft and fill in the content of the 1023 long version, You will know how your group, your working group will be defined. You will understand the challenges that you have ahead of you, but you will have the proper structure to deal with it as you move on. So again, that decision is yours. After you've done the 1023, short or long, you wait a couple months. We waited 6 months in a queue. So we were there twiddling our fingers with money waiting at the door, but we were operational, but we couldn't accept it because we couldn't provide that tax exemption. So we basically went on a 6-month hold until the IRS popped up one day and said, bingo, you got it. And I understand there's a queue. So always bake in those 6 months once you incorporate that you will not receive any reply from the IRS. And in some cases, you will receive a reply to further explain your position on item number 2. So be ready for that. So the lucky ones can do it between 3 to 6 months, and the other ones can go up to a year with many questions being returned and refuted by the IRS. All right, so you've done that, and then you are now, while this is happening in parallel, you're creating your bylaws. Now, the bylaws are basically your blueprint. When you design a building, you want to have your blueprint of how you're going to manage the organization, how you're going to do your elections, how you're going to create a board, how the officers, what are the limits, what are the constraints, what are the compensation. It's all this activities that provides you with the document that everybody will use for the life of the organization. You can adjust them through board approvals, new terms, but usually it is 80% to be used throughout the life expectancy of this. So the creation of the bylaws, you can get them on the internet. There's many bylaws, settings, they're standard, they're boilerplate, they're free. You can make them as extensive as you want to, but try to always keep it very open-minded in your wording. Don't close yourself. And if you have anybody in the legal area, a paralegal or an attorney that can help you, have them give it a look. Okay, so now you create your bylaws, but you have people. You put together a team and you're recruiting. The first thing you need to recruit is your management team. You need to get the champion. So in my case, I was the champion. I went out and I got together a group of people, made some phone calls, and I said, would you like to help us out? I'll be the executive director to start. And with this team of officers, we had a treasurer. In the state of New Jersey, we are required to have treasurer, secretary, and a president. And I do believe it is kind of like the status quo across the nation, but in some cases it just be 2. And in some cases you can hold 2 hats as officers as well. But this team, you quickly have to assemble. And with that team, you start putting together your board. But your management team is usually the same officer's team. So the management team is your president, executive director. Now, most nonprofits call themselves executive directors. But if you look at the new trend in nonprofits, they're now using the same private sector terminology, president, vice president, and so forth, because we are run in some way financially and legally, compensation-wise, and all other things. We do run it like a business. It is a business, and you run it that way. And therefore, the executive director names kind of tend to disappear on the new nonprofits that are being popped. So this is your management team, and you're putting together a board of directors. So usually your bylaws will say, which is state requirement, that 3 is the minimum. You can have, 10, 20, but try to keep it manageable, Keep a team of people who you can bring in at the startup level that are willing to fund the start in some way. So we went out and said, guys, I need you guys to be the founding members. You get a board and help us do the funding. And we were very lucky that each one of them, which in this case was 6, came in with some funding. We did a minimum. And with that money, we were able to then send the bylaws, the 1023, and all the activity in there with, the fees, which ran us about $3,000 plus. So the roles of the officers, and I'm going to try to emphasize over the next hour and a half, and I'm trying to go faster, but emphasize the separation, guys, the separation between officers, management team, and the board. So officers and management team are the same, and the board. There must be a clear definition, a clear line of separation. Roles of the corporate officers are elected by the boards, we know that, and it is to manage the daily activities of the corporation. It is common for the CEO sometimes to be a board director. I call him here director, but sometimes, is that a scratch on my screen or something? What is that? I wonder what that is. Okay, so that is you want to have, in my case, I sit on the board and I also sit in the management team. Yeah, I have a interesting yellow line there. So this is the structure, right? So the nonprofit corporate. Do we have any questions quickly? I can't see. Let me see.
We have one question in the chat from
Go ahead.
Risa. The question is, please explain the lobbying limitations on a 501c3. What % of the budget or revenues can be spent on lobbying?
Okay, so it's the 20% rule. There's a 20% rule out there, and the 501c3 versus the 6 and the 4 cannot lobby directly, cannot do heavy lobbying. And when I mean lobbying, I'm not talking about testifying in an open forum in the legislative body. I'm not talking about testifying in an assembly group or a committee in the legislative body. I'm talking about calling your senator and asking for a private meeting with your senator at the golf course, having lunch with the assemblyman. Those are lobbying activities. Participating in a campaign, those are lobbying activities. Those are limited to in the 503 to 20%. So you can allocate that money to the budget as well, 20%. Try to keep it below the 20%. And in some cases, don't just do your standard testimonials and don't do lobby. When a 501(c)(3), a 6 and a 4, you got carte blanche, with exception of political direct campaigns. There is a no-no there across the board on political direct campaigns. Even though the last couple of years with this whole PAC and political side, there's been some loose ends. But from our purpose, our environmental purpose and work that we do, it's the 4s and the 6 that can lobby, and the 3s only with the 20% rule of time and budget. Hope that answers that question. And okay, so corporate structure. Here we go. Come on, this page needs to change. Okay, so what is the role of the board? And I emphasize, because I hear a lot of board members are meeting on a monthly basis with the board, and the board is, the minimum required by the IRS or the bylaws is 1 meeting a year. You might want to have 2, which is a lot healthier, but that's it, because the board's responsibility is for hiring, evaluating, and if needed, firing the executive director. The board should not be involved in hiring or evaluating or any other activities related to the employees. That is the responsibility of the AD. The AD is responsible for the day-to-day operations, not the board. The board is not going to get involved in that. They should be in their compliance and governance responsibilities to ensure that the filings are done, that the budgets are approved, that the tax filings are correct, that all this that the IRS and the state treasurer is requiring on an annual basis are in compliance and so forth on a yearly basis. And of course, you can do other activities, which I'll explain here later, of how the board can play a role in your management team. So budget and funding. The reason, and I'll go back to the board a little later on the structure, but budget and funding. Now, budget is very important. From the startup mode that you saw the calculator in that picture. The first thing in your mind is funding. Nothing gets done without money. It really is challenging to do anything. Even though today's social platforms allows us to do a lot of advertising for free and a lot of communications for free, and there's a lot of platforms out there to help us. You can hack here and there, but really you need funding to set up your URL, your website, to get a logo design, to maybe not a logo because the USCC gives you that, but to build your presence on the web and so forth. So there's got to be some funding. For this, I always recommend that if you have no business skills, take a business 101 class or surround yourself with somebody who has some just basic business ideas of how to run a small little business. It always helps. It really is fundamental to understand the rules of accounting, even the basic ones, and the rules of creating a P&L and a budget so that you can eventually present it to the board, as well as your compliance issues with the IRS. So create a business plan. you got to have a business plan. This is your roadmap, and the business plan has the executive summary. We are here to what is it called? To further the mission of infrastructure development for composting and organics food diversion. Our company description, the market analysis, state of New Jersey has over 50 million people throwing food everywhere. I mean, the tonnage, the methane, there's a huge opportunity. You talk about the demographics, the income, the opportunities that the market can provide you to. You do a competitive analysis with all the states, with other operations, be either haulers or processors, anaerobic, aerobic. You describe your management team and how you're organized. You have a breakdown of your products and services. You are either doing some consulting, you're doing membership programs, and you're doing education, and so forth in your plan. Your marketing plan is very important. We'll talk about that at the end. That'll help you. And if you guys who are at the presentation at the show, Isaac says here he spoke the day before about coalition building in your advocacy work. So for those who were present, I hope you remember. If not, there is a whole chapter on how marketing does coalition building, which I'll talk at the end. And of course, then your sales strategy. To achieve these numbers, how will you get monies through your education program? There's got to be a strategy there that is set forward throughout the year. How will you get grants? Because these are revenue opportunities. There has to be a strategy, and you just put it there. We will have somebody assigned for grant writing, research, which is tedious, long, boring to sit in front of a computer and look at those huge websites and try to download the specific grant that you want to look at. And then, of course, finally, the budget. So budgets can be very simple. It's the same budget you do at home, the same budget you do for your business, but using the same standard budgets. This is a recommended internal budget that they use for nonprofits. I just took it from the internet, but you know what? I said, no, I like mine better. This is the budget. And you're looking here at a real P&L budget submitted by the New Jersey Composting Council on our second year. And it shows here at the top our membership, our contribution revenues, our membership, which is divided in gold, silver, basic, bronze, and we raised a bunch of money there. We had sponsorship fees. This is a summit. We always hold a 1-year organic summit, and we do pretty good. And then COVID came and killed us, but we did pretty good the first years. And we were, averaging between $25,000 to $30,000. And the reason why I'm sharing this, guys, because remember, as a nonprofit, it's open books. You are open. Once you join a nonprofit, everything you do is open books. There's nothing to hide. There's no competitors. Your board has to post this on the internet, on your website. You have to have open books. So here I am showing you my books of what 3 years ago it looked like with pre-COVID, with all your expenses, your internal expenses, meals, banners, programs, photographers, stamps, banking accounts, the fees on the banking accounts, on your QuickBooks, on your accounting, your PO box, your web server, blah, blah, blah. It brings you your marketing expenses. And of course, the USCC Compost, this is the external program, which is training that we do together with the USCC. We do the COTC every other year, and we, as many of you know, they share their revenues on the sponsorship level only and not on their attendees. But this is what a typical P&L looks like and a budget, and so you should have this bill in the year. It's a forecast. Yes, it will move. Yes, there will be some changes. There'll be some factors like our year of COVID. We had something like, I don't know, let's make a number. We had 50K for that year, and COVID came, and we had to make some quick adjustments so that we could adjust to the new budget, which came down significantly due to the lack of presence. When you're doing a budget, you gotta keep in mind as you're doing your financial reports, if you're gonna do an accrual or a cash-based report. Startups with less than $10,000 usually go with cash reporting versus accrual. When you're hitting the 45,000 and above, you should go to accrual. It'll give your board a better understanding of how you're running the business and how it's being forecast. Get yourself a CPA, even if the CPA is only for a one-time-a-year event which is your annual filing reporting. That third party eyes and ears will provide you more of a compliance and due diligence on the eyes of the board that says, you know, the accounting wasn't done in Heidel's garage, but it was done now. All the numbers, which of course are reconciliated with your QuickBooks, your checking account, and now a third-party CPA firm is looking at it, and he does the proper filing. Keep in mind these fees, these bid us at the beginning, we were not very sure. And then finally, the insurance, guys. Insurance is something that I wasn't very prepared for it. And if you are compensating volunteers, officers, or your management team, you got to have workers' comp in the state of New Jersey. It is a state law. And I do believe it is probably across the nation very much the same when it comes down to the workers' comp. Even if you're only working out of your house virtually, they still require you that when you do your filings with the state and federal, that workers' comp be in there. Additionally, there seems to be a new trend, which is the insurance of directors and officers, the D&O. The D&O is something that the board of directors should have. It gives them a comfort level. It's a way of selling to them, saying, look, if one of our volunteers trips over a compost pile and ends up, you know, run over by a, I won't say it, but anyway, has something wrong going on, that the board has to be somehow shielded from these activities, and therefore the D&O is an insurance that is becoming more common practice, and so you should bake that item in there. They run around $500 a year for D&Os, subject to what your that is, and then the workers' comp is, of course, subject to your state. But it's very important that you keep that from the beginning in mind. And finally, everything you design, put in paper, it has to be approved by the board. So your budget of spending 10 pencils and receiving money, let's say receiving money from the USCC's annual check, that has to be put into your budget, and it has to be approved by the board. So we usually have our meetings right after the 31st of December. We let people settle in work, and we have our meetings around January 31st, because the summit's always there of the compost. We do it first week of February. And by then we already have all our bank consolidations for year to year, 1st of January to the 31st of the next year. And we present not only the end of the year, but we present our budget for that year. And so your board needs to have this in this case. Anyway, do I have any questions?
Yes,
Feel free.
we have 5 minutes before our break. Well, we have 4 minutes and we have 2 questions. The
Great.
first question is, in the fiscal agent model, FS is 501c3. Are the donor/membership fees tax deductible?
Correct. No. That's the answer is
Yes.
yes, because that's the reason why you went with that fiscal sponsorship, to attract that type of donor or that type of grant. Look, I'm a strong believer that most of our revenues in this industry comes from grants, not your memberships, not the USCC, sorry USCC, but it comes from the grants that are out there. There's a lot of money being put in by the government, both state and federal, and by profit organizations. I mean, we are funded right now, one of our organizations, by the Tap family, which is a private organization that wants to tackle climate change in the state, mitigating food waste diversion, right? And so by having a fiscal entity, they called us and they said, Jairo, we know you guys are doing composting. We really like this idea. Can you pitch us the idea, and then maybe we can follow? And the first question was, are you a 501c3? So because we have that, because in this case, we use our 501c3 as kind of like the entity to do that. You can have that third-party fiscal entity to do that for you. And so the answer is absolutely yes. And in the internet, just type fiscal sponsor, nonprofits, and look at the huge list of entities that only are catering to doing that. Okay, next one.
Perfect. The next question is, if you have one lone staff person, can they be an admin assistant, or must one staff then be an ED? Where are the roles of an ED spelled out?
Look, so you have these are. Let's talk about a startup. A startup is a one-man band, right? A startup does it all. He is the person who is the admin. But unfortunately, that's not sustainable over the long run. So you have to get your volunteers in place. So let's say you now are a mature organization and you have volunteers. If you want to pay the admin and not the ED, that's perfectly fine. Because sometimes the ED, like my space, I have my private practice and I use my ED role on the nonprofit to provide my pro bono work, and I don't. But I will allow a person who's doing full-time work, maybe they're doing the social media platform, maybe they're running the administrative work, maybe they are accounting. They should get paid if that's all you can distribute there. So it doesn't matter. I would pay it to the person who's actively involved in the organization and keep everybody else doing what they're doing. But work collectively and unify, not solo. You will die. Your family will leave you. Your dog will be upset if you do not have, split yourself out in many ways with other people who can help you.
Perfect.
Yeah. So again, I wanted to say to the group that, there's a lot of case scenarios out there and how you're structured. You're under somebody's umbrella, and there are ways of restructuring what you're doing today. These tools or this high level conversation today is some of the experience that I have learning with the legal and accounting advisors that we've been very lucky to surround ourselves with, because the resources are there. The state of New Jersey, like many other states, have the Association of Nonprofits. Become a member of those organizations. We pay $100 a year, to become members of the association. And they provide us pro bono attorneys. They provide us networking opportunities, and they provide us ways of listening to other nonprofits who have been successful, because you have to network in this space. You cannot just think that it's all under one banner, in this case, the USCC. You have to go out and meet other nonprofits and network with them. And to do this, you need also to have associations that are specifically oriented in helping you with resources on how to create a compensation format, how to do the proper accounting, and or to do the budgets that you will need to do. So with that said, I think we can take a break, right? Hey, great, it worked out right on time. Unbelievable, because I do believe the next slide is about board dynamics. So I'll leave with that, and we'll come back to Star Wars, and we'll talk about how you run how you could run, because I'm just recommending, and it's been successful for me, and I think the state today is leading because of this particular format. But it's just a high level idea. So with that, Hesa, do we go on a break and then come back in? What time is it?
Maybe a 10-minute break. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Yep. So we'll be back at 3:55.
Perfect. Before we head to our break, I just wanted to let everyone know, please remember, if you stay for the full duration of the session, you will be eligible for 2 PDHs, and I can help you keep track of that for CCOM and CCP.
Yeah. I also wanted to, Karen, thank you for your lobbying is direct action on a specific bill. That is correct. So that's a further down point. So I'm happy you guys are adding to the chat. And so I'll be reading some of it, but thank you for adding your comments and suggestions here.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for your amazing questions.
Can you hear me, Hessa?
Yes. Yes, I can hear
Okay,
you.
great. Okay, great. All right. I've been reading some of the chats there, and I see there must be a lot of 501c3s out there. And you know, the concept of lobbying versus influencing public policy is separate. I think that our roles are mainly in public policy, and therefore it doesn't count. I mean, testifying in open public invitations by the legislation, that's public policy settings. Talking to your regulators, which in a case sometimes are the ones who execute the laws. Those are very important activities of the nonprofits, especially our nonprofits. But clearly the 501(4) and the 501(6) are a little more robust when it comes down to the industry you are working for. You are basically a industry association in the eyes of the IRS versus a charitable organization as a 501c3. So you just have to, interpret that and read. There's a lot of links out there that tell you what, who, and where. But my recommendation is, if you have to create another organization so that you can, not risk the IRS removing your tax exemption, because that's ultimately the penalty of being maybe interpreted incorrectly what you were doing as a 501c3, is that you get slammed with a removal, which is incredibly, just a sad story. But it has happened. Okay, so with that, again, looking at the questions here. Yeah, and I have that yellow thing there. So I don't know what it is. It showed up. Maybe I didn't.
It's okay. I think
Okay.
it's fine.
Oh yeah. So now that you're all coming back, do not fall asleep with me on this section, because there is a quiz at the end of this session. The USCC has asked me to quiz you on what we discussed today, so that you can get these wonderful credits for your master's program or recycling coordinators, or to stay up to speed with your accreditations. So please stay at the end and we'll go over. As I said, it's only 100 questions and you have 10 minutes to answer. I mean, 5 questions. We'll have that quiz right after the end for all of you to do it. And then we'll, so you have the link, right, Hessa? You can put that link of the quiz to put there in.
Yes, I have the link.
Okay. My presentation is a forgery and not actually being delivered by Hyro. Okay. Yep, that's it. I am another person, but we'll go back. Let me open the presentation. Where is it? Open screen. And here we go. So is everybody back? Yeah, we see.
It's gone. That's good.
Okay. So I talked about at the beginning of how I through my years in both the public and the private sector as a board member of a New York Stock Exchange entity. And I don't know if you guys remember, but in a long time ago, there was a company called Enron out of Texas, and they blew up their whole financials. And based on that blow up of financials, they created this huge, cumbersome compliance activity. So boards became incredibly stringent on how they would do reporting on their financials, especially publicly traded boards where I sat on. But the same thing, sitting on a public board as a nonprofit, they all have one thing in common. We must separate the roles of the management team and the board of directors. And there are instruments to do this. Very, very nice instruments and verticals, let's say, that you can create to ensure that your board members feel engaged in the organization, but at the same time, know what the limitations are when sitting at the board meeting for their compliance require voting activities or re-election activities and so forth. So in this little chapter, I'm going to try to touch on the dynamics of the management team. You know, I think in the case of the picture we see here, if you didn't like it, you get your head chopped off. Well, that's not the case in the nonprofit or what I'm going to teach, but let me try to change the page. Hey, look, the yellow mark is gone. So I put an organizational chart for you guys of what seems to be working. And this is throughout many samples. I mean, I've run probably 10 companies and it all kind of very, very similar when it comes down to this. So you have your organizational chart. At the most important part of the chart is that at the top of your chart of a nonprofit, who is there? Your members. They are the ones who are going to vote in your directors and trustees as their tenures expire. The members are the most important. So I put them there at the top. And some people, you know, consider the members the most important element of any structure in an organization. And I think some of you understand that, especially those who are membership-based organizations versus those who are not. Director and trustees then become the compliance entity. They are in a space of their own. They meet by law once a year, virtually can be done. They must vote and they must have quorum to start meetings. They must have unison votes to pass any changes that the members bring forward or that the management bring forward. It's all a team. And so you want to have your board as diverse as possible and a good size. You know, I think 3 is too tight, 6 might be manageable. But if you are an organization, maybe the size of the USCC, 10 or 14, it gets difficult to manage, but it's also a very good profile to have as you're having people from across the spectrum. Then after that is the executive director, or in my case, the president. And then of course, under him, the remaining paid staff or unpaid volunteers in this case. So what does a board look like? You know, when you're looking for a board, I think it's important to look at, you know, that age, that you have all ages in here, that seasoned, young, try to bring all levels, that your gender is really diverse, your race reflects the state that you're operating in, what are those residents, municipalities, governors, and so forth, religion, culture, geography, education, economic, professional, and even disabilities. Some boards have to have that kind of diversity. And so keep that in mind as you put a board together, that it's not just one board of, I would say, guys alone doing all the work, you know, but it is a group of people from all areas. The board dynamics is, you know, you have your recruitment of the board. A board is, as we pointed out, the most important component. You're required to have one. You must recruit them one by one, and the way you recruit is by demonstrating that you have some knowledge of how to run the business, that you understand the marketplace, that you have the right structure to insure them, like maybe insurance, maybe one board member from an attorney, an environmental attorney who wants to come on board says, I will do it, but I want to have my D&O insurance in place. Those are the kind of benefits that they look for, or key things to join the organization. Not pursuing a personal agenda. That you have to be very clear. Do not go after in your recruitment those who have personal agenda. The board member has to be very third party when he sits at that board. Even though he belongs to a specific industry, he must let all that go and sit there as an expert in the industry, but be very objective. Retention of the board, you do it through your bylaws. Usually it's 2 years. And of course, you have a succession plan. A succession plan is something very important from the beginning. You can have a committee, a succession plan committee that knows when board members are coming to their tenure. We have a rotation of about 20% of the board members who either want to go into new opportunities or really are maxed out in their work and they depart. Well, we don't like to get just phone calls saying, hey, I quit, I'm done, see you later. Well, it happens. Don't get your feelings hurt, but the right thing is to have a succession plan, and where you know that November's coming around, you're having your elections in February, you want to make contact with your boards, advise them, you are 2 years up, will you continue to help us out over another 2 years, and we'll put you on the ballot. If you're not, then let's start looking for the candidate. And then you have your committee, which is assisting your succession plan and identifying candidates that can be brought up as this board member will then have his resignation. Usually it's nice to have the resignation in the meeting, participate, say goodbye to your fellow colleague board members, and they do the same. You know, you have to define the roles of the board. Some board members will be specific in certain committees that they want to help out in. And we'll talk about them here at the bottom. So the board, clearly at the beginning, you also want to tell them, gentlemen, you are a board member. You're not a management team member. If you want to be part of the management team member, you're welcome to be in one of our committees, and you can be a board representative in that particular committee, and there you can help out and you can bring the input, but not as a board member. The board member is completely cocooned in his role of compliance and governance. You'll have to have your minimum participation, which we talked about, the 2 years, for a 10-year, once a year meeting. Ideally, by year, you meet at the 6 month. So June comes around, you close your 6 month first semester, and you do your July 15 meeting, and you say to the board, we are on track to meet our budgets, our sales forecast. We have this and that, and da. You present to them very high level, any issues with the compliance, they approve. You comment how they can help you with some of the activities and so forth. But annual and biannual, I recommend, and I do not recommend monthly basis. You'll bore your board members. They will get tired very quickly, and it's not the customary way of working with the board. That is a committee more than a board meeting, but that becomes mostly a committee when you're doing these monthly meetings. Engaging, stay in contact with your board. You know, the president has to constantly be talking to the board. I do it. I pick up the phone when they call me. I text them immediately when they want to know something. I ensure that they get all the paperwork at least 2 days or a day prior to the board meeting, so they have ample time to review the financials, to review my comments, to review the issues that I might even bring a board member on the spotlight and say, you run the advocacy committee and I would like you to speak for 15 minutes. Is it possible? Yes, Hydro, I'd love to do that. But try to do that by engaging your board. The board also will provide you one important activity, and is it when you get into compensation, if you are the president or and you're also sitting on the board, well, it can be a little difficult to talk about compensation if you're going to seek one, or if you are giving somebody, maybe the secretary is also sometimes sits on the board to write down the minutes. So you want to create a buffer, and so you create the compensation committee within the board. The same way you create a board succession plan committee within the board. And it's usually 2 board members who volunteer to meet once a year extra. And what happens to that committee is that the committee engages with the management team and reviews the compensation proposed plan. So instead of, in my case, giving the board of directors the compensation plan of my volunteers, I give it to the compensation committee, and they kind of massage it, present it, and then they will present it at the next board meeting as in, we have a new opportunity to hire a consultant, this is the fee, and the board votes. So you're kind of hands off, but that committee is also very important. Conflict of interest, it's a key, guys. This is the get-go. At the moment that you sign up a board member, the moment you incorporate, the moment you file the 1023, the moment you file your treasury, that compliance and conflict of interest arises. And we all got conflict of interest paperwork as well by the USCC. So we're all under that umbrella that, you know, if the nonprofit is going out to rent an office, a board member owns that office, he will be in a conflict of interest. So at that moment, you don't fire the board member and you don't cancel the office either, but you excuse the board member from the voting event. So there's no conflict of interest. I mean, you can also cancel the lease, but you can always take the first approach, which is to ask the board member to excuse himself and not participate because of conflict of interest on the voting activity to approve that office that you want to move into. The board of directors, that meeting has protocols, and the protocols are something like this. This is what I send out at all my meetings, private sector and board meetings, but you have a welcome to order. We do the location, we do the time. This, as I said, it usually comes out a month before so that everybody can see it, and we send it the night as well. And it's welcome to call to order. Call to order means that if we have 6 board members, we need majority to do the meeting. So if there is only 3, guess what? The meeting gets canceled and you have to reconvene again. But if the order is there, you got 4 members, you got quorum, what it's called quorum. And therefore, the meeting can proceed with item number 2, which is to review the agenda that you have here, approve that agenda. A board member may say, no, I don't want to discuss the operating budget in this meeting. Why? Because I don't want to. Okay, well, we'll vote on it. So we vote on approving the agenda. It usually gets approved very quickly. And then the minutes on compliance required by the IRS, you have to have minutes on this important annual meeting. And so the minutes have to be approved. And so usually you send it the night before. It's just a paragraph. We talked about this, that. We approved the budget. We approved the financials. We told Heido, thank you, goodbye, minutes approved. And they are logged in your files in case one day the IRS shows at the doorstep and says, hey guys, show me how you do these meetings. President's report is the next thing. You talk about mission, you talk about your long-term strategy. You talk about important things like the compost trading course. This was, of course, we were having our our compost operators training course. We were having Compost 2020 coming up, which was the summit. We usually send a group of people. We funded. We have a strategy, and we talked about the revenue streams, board feedback, blah blah blah. Then we do the budget presentation, and they have to approve it. So here we approve the 2019 budget for the summit, and we approve the operating budget for the 2020 year. Then we had one particular committee, as I pointed out, who wanted to speak. So we let the board member of the Advocacy and Market Development, which is a very important group in our 501c4, and which is the NJCC, and then call. And then when you set the date for the next meeting right after that, and you have to stay within those 60 minutes. This has to be completed within 60 minutes. 59 minutes, you're on item number 7. If you go over it, you're not doing your job of managing properly the discussion. You have maybe interruptions. Maybe you have something that you need to say, board members, we need to stop here. And I think this topic needs to be addressed under a committee outside of here, or we need to consult an attorney, or we need to further investigate, and we'll come back to you. But don't get stuck, and don't let a board member stuck you on some crazy thing going on. Continue your agenda, because you need by law to finish this agenda, and hopefully within the 60 minutes that you have set forward, so that the board members can hang up and go to their daily business, as they are very busy people and do not want to say, again, the NJCC, those guys just talk BS, and they continue talking, they never stop, and I never miss my meetings, okay? You adjourn, and you ensure that this entire event is recorded in minutes by a person that you bring in. Usually you bring an officer or a member of the organization, that it will help you to keep the minutes, because I cannot do the presentations and do the minutes at the same time. And I can't ask my board members to do the board minutes and pay attention to what I'm trying to convene, so that they can vote on these items. So this is what the simple agenda looks like. You have protocol on motions, how you can kill a motion, how you can amend a motion. As board gets bigger, they get a little more complex. So guys, it's just things that you can look at and play around with. The compensation committee, I think, is very important, because I emphasize compensation for nonprofits. Without compensation, nonprofits tend to dwindle and fade into the air, and people get things done at their time. So compensating people is very important, and I believe in that. So therefore, the compensation committee, which is discharges the board of the responsibilities regarding compensation, and it gives it to a committee. So the executive officers can talk directly to these 2 members or 1 member. Usually it's 2, and you can explain to them what's going on, and they can then turn it around and talk to the board. Here we go. Okay, so we talked about the board, the structure of the board, and I want to say one last thing about the board, and that is, and I know some of you are board members the same way I have been, and I just want to say this without upsetting anybody, but it is not our duty as board members to bring personal agendas into the board. It is not our job to sit in a board and ask for detailed explanations of what the president is doing or the ED is doing. It is our role to keep very clear that it's governance. The board is the ultimate entity that reports to the IRS, to the local treasurer, and to the state's compliance offices. So you have to keep this very, very, very high level and try not to bring that you are an expert in curbside pickup. And so therefore you think that we should be doing curbside pickup more often with our members, and we should discuss it, and you keep on going. And at that moment, what you should do is you recommend that board member who has this valuable information take a different role in one of your committees and becomes enroll in that committee alongside your volunteers and other entities and help that committee, but not at the board. Sorry. I hear silence. Please mute your microphones. Okay, so that's something. Am I getting static? I'm getting a static. Hello. Okay, that is something that you will fine tune as you are managing your board of directors. So then comes the president. The president or the executive director is really, he is the CEO. He maintains complete oversight of the operational components and is responsible for all paid and volunteer staff. He's the main contact at any organization. It's not a board member. It's not an officer. It is the president who is the main sole contact. He is either an officer, usually most of the time he should be an officer. So he has access to the checkbooks, to the banks. He can do the recordings with the IRS and so forth. And he should, but not required, should be a board member. In small organizations, it does help to be a board member. In large organizations, there's always a separation. The president or executive director is not on the board. He does present to the board. He does listen to the board. He reports to the board, but he's not a board member. He will excuse himself when all the voting activities go on the board. He's responsible for executing the policies and the programs that the board approves, and he is part of the management team alongside his two wonderful officers, vice president, which is under the law, usually the secretary, or the treasurer, which could be your business development director. So there are many books out there to read about board management. I like to use the private sector experience, and I do welcome you to also read about the nonprofit boards, but successful nonprofits look very much like a private organization in the way they structure their board and compliance team. Okay, so let's move into the next one. Any questions on that one? Any
Yes.
Suggestions?
Linda had two questions.
Linda, go ahead.
The first, oh yeah, Linda, please.
I forgot them, but I'm kind of asking them for everyone in case other people are thinking. I was wondering, is there an ideal size for a board? And then you also referenced what I guess would be Robert's Rules of Order and how much should our boards be sticking to Robert's Rules of Order? I don't know if that's something we should offer training in, but most of us don't.
So the question is, the minimum is 3, not recommended to have that small board, but some entities when they start, if that's all you have, the startup, yes, quickly ramped up to 6. That's an ideal number to have 6. And we, for example, are right now looking to expand our board because we are growing. And so as you're growing, you should continue to grow the diversity of your industry. What's the right number, Linda? I don't know. I think anything past 10 board members, it must be a very large organization, difficult to manage. 6 seems to be like the sweet spot out there in the private sector. I've seen that number, and also in the nonprofit. And then Robert's Rules, no, I wouldn't stick to the Robert Rules. I think those are, I brought them there because it can help you to start with, but tweak them to something that you can use, like the one I gave you. The Robert Rules will give you the opening quorum, will give you some of the basics. But no, I wouldn't recommend studying. There are other options on managing board that you can learn out there. Okay, so yeah, that's funny. I don't remember volunteering for this. This is. But thank you, Linda, for letting me have this chance of being part of the CAC and helping you guys, you know, improve. Because the ultimate goal of all of us is to grow composting infrastructure so that we can reutilize this wonderful resource into whatever activity of soil rehabilitation, food desert areas, soil management, the stormwater, blah, blah, blah. But this is the main goal, to increase our infrastructure across the nation. And to do that, you got to be organized in the proper way. So volunteering is very important because, as I said before, can't do this by yourself. And you can't pay everybody because especially startups, there's nothing. There's people say money. I say, don't worry about it. There's none. Okay, great. So then you have to really recruit people and retain them. And your volunteers usually have a rotation. There's a statistic out there of volunteers and nonprofits have a life expectancy of 2 years maximum. That is, people get burned out, including officers and board members. Those 2 years are not just because somebody came out, but it's the statistic. You will get tired of it. So retaining your volunteers is by doing programs of recognition, doing programs of maybe paying for their expenses, programs of allowing them to access your training courses for free. And that is also included in the recruitment. The excitement of coming to work for you should come alongside with the perks of what you can give back to them so that they just don't come in full of energy. And in 6 months, they realize, oh my God, I can't do this again. I'm meeting again 7 o'clock at night on Thursday night or Saturdays at 12 at the park to do the green garden or the green team meetings. It gets tiring. So you have to train them and you have to promote them within the organization. So I put a list of items that helps there without having to give them compensation. But ultimately, if you can compensate them with activities, specific activities related to grants, activities related to your summits. And so let's bring out grants. You have volunteers and you're fighting for a grant. And as you know, when you file a grant, you have to put a budget of all the work. Insert your volunteers in there as part of your working teams that are being compensated by the grant. A grant usually has a science officer, has an accountant, has business development, has the workers, the cement people, the marketing, the education component, which is very big. That can be compensated, and you can compensate your fellow volunteers through those grants. Give them specific tasks. Don't make them go all over the place, because volunteers will come in blazing guns that they want to help out. And you just have to make sure you keep them cocooned and say, you know what, focus on these 2 municipalities, green teams and environmental commissions. Focus on our social media if that's what you're good at, and help us in, but don't spread them too thin, because it'll be like pulling a chicken out of his head. They'll go crazy. And insert them into your committees. Ultimately, the committees are the most important activity of the nonprofit. So I put the 3 committees up there: the advocacy committee, the membership committee, and the education and outreach committee. The advocacy committee, of course, is the one that tracks the bills, tries to follow all the bills, monitor the bills, and works with other organizations who are heavy lobbyists or have funding for lobbying to provide that know-how that we know, which is composting and so forth. Membership, you have to have a committee there, because membership is an ongoing fundraising activity. Call, find out where they are, under the rocks, anywhere they are, you need to have that committee. And then of course the education and outreach, which is right now a committee that we just restarted, and they are, they just created the Compost Cafe. So we have a Compost Cafe that we meet on a quarterly basis, thanks to the education and outreach, and where they sit around for 45 minutes and they chat and a little more back and forward, and thanks to the education committee. So those 3 committees, a must. If you can only have 2 of them, advocacy and education, or maybe advocacy and education and membership, you can run it on your own. But those are very key elements to plug in board members who want to be active, as well as to plug in volunteers who want to find a sense of identity within one of the committees. Remember that. A board member can be your champion at one of these committees, as well as a volunteer can help out in here, and that really gives them that kind of separation and idea. Okay, so we come down to the strategy, right? So you have here your strategy. I believe that, you know, nonprofits, you need to strategize, and you got both tactical, which is quick things you got to do, and then you have your long-term strategy plans, right? So the most important thing in a nonprofit is funding, guys. That's the goal of our long-term survivability, is funding your organization's programs. And by the way, the life expectancy of a nonprofit is 2 years as well. Most nonprofits fiddle away and disappear from the IRS's eyes, stop filing, never come back. They just fiddle away in 2 years. It's like something like, I don't know, it's a big percentage. It's a big percentage. So unless you get your funding. So in your strategy, you must define where are your revenue targets. And you sit around the room with your group and you say, guys, grants. Heido says that grants are a great place to go. Well, I look at the grants and I just applaud it at the amount of money that's out there, and the amount of not only government agencies allocating funds for green activities, sustainable activities, climate change, composting now with the new program coming out of the federal government, but you have private entities, Patagonia, you have families like the TAP Foundation, the Rockefeller family. There are many entities out there that are giving monies out to activities that you can demonstrate where climate change is so related to not having a food diversion program. So grants are at the top of my list. Events, second most important thing. You know, your events could be in the form of education, they can be in form of summit, they can be in form of webinars, they can be in form of anything that you can charge a $1, $25, or $900 if you want to for your courses as they get complex. Membership, membership represents a good number, but you'll see in a chart, I think I have a chart here that shows you what it represents. It's a good, important number, and you must have that very clear. But what is the target of members? I mean, in the state of New Jersey, we are something around 50 members, active members. And people say, Jairo, why don't you have 200? I say, well, wait a minute, this is very specific. Food diversion and composting is not for everybody. Not everybody's in there. Residents don't see it yet. We are now moving into the municipalities, so recycling coordinators are starting to jump on the wagon. You have, of course, most of your for-profit entities, because we are a for-profit industry association, most of our activities. So it's very targeted, you know, unless you go something else, it's not going to grow too fast. Grants will, events will. Advocacy, there are some monies in advocacy that you can get. And of course, ultimately, if you're a 501c3, or if you have a fiscal 501c3 affiliated to your organization, you can accept donations. So therefore, they can be deductible. And some people have the cash, you know, they have the check. Here's 5,000, Jairo. Take it, do it. I'm not going to pay Uncle Sam. I'm paying you. And I've seen that before. It's pretty bizarre, but it happens all the time. So this is what my business plan is looking like when I mention the importance of our strategy. And again, the 3 nonprofits that I work with, I do consulting work with other nonprofits. It seems like grants are beyond the 50%. That's what the main effort are. And they're not easy, believe me. Grants is like being a farmer. You have to first fix the land. You then have to lay the seed, figure out the water, and then just pray and wait for the rain to come and sit there and watch it grow. And once it starts growing, it starts coming. You file for a grant, it takes 6 months to a year, blah, 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 it goes through. Okay. Then 18% is membership. That's 18 to 20% the membership. Your donations could be 5%. But hey, if you find a big donor give you $1 million, then this chart, throw it in the garbage. You have your services, which sometimes your services are, we do a lot of education on behalf of the municipalities. And so we provide that as a service. And then sometimes we help design pilot programs. We provide that as a service. And we charge a fee specifically for that particular service. Right now, we're doing a backyard specific compost training program for a municipality who requires us to be on site, bring the materials, compost demonstrate over a period of 2 weeks. We said $1,000. That's what it's going to cost. Oh, but I'm a member. Okay, I'm not charging you the $2,000 that I would charge if you were not a member. But that's the kind of services that you can come out there. And for that, you need to be qualified, you need to be trained, you need to be educated so that they really identify you as knowing what you are providing a service for. And then right there at the bottom, Linda, I'm sorry, but we have only 2% in chapter support by the USCC. I know some of you out there are counting on this as 100% of your revenue. Guys, you need to move into a new strategy because you got to go after a pie that might look similar to this. Not identical, but it should look similar to this. Okay, so your marketing plan. Once you define your remember, we came across, we build an organization, we went with one particular structure, we put together a board, we have a defined management team. They were given orders to go out and now do the plan with a budget that was approved by the board. We went out, and one of them is the marketing plan, because we know what our revenues are, so we know what our targets are to go after this marketing plan. So marketing, hey, that's an art. By the way, my wife is a marketing guru, so I've learned a lot about this. She's marketing guru for Unilever Corporation, which is the food manufacturer worldwide. And this is like mega intelligence that they use to direct traffic and to be able to capture those markets and revenues you got. So when you're doing your marketing plan, you have your services portfolio design. So you will say that composting training is $1,000. Your consulting works for this. You define your summit, whatever it is you're doing, you define it clearly from the beginning. You brand yourself and you position yourself in the state to be a compost. You're a composter. You're not a hauler, but you do some hauling, but you're a composter and you take all of them. You're agnostic to technology. Our mission was that. We positioned and our image was it, we take it all. As long as your food diversion program is happening and you're not burying this stuff or burning it, we will help you. Ultimately, we want you to compost it. But if you cannot do it or you want to send it into renewable energy, we will help you. So we have this image that we will help you set the stage to divert organics at all costs, which is what we're trying to do right now. Event planning, you must set your target dates from the beginning of the year. Say it's September, the time to have the dates. Make sure you don't have religious dates in there, because we've always come across the dates and we make mistakes, but have this clearly defined in your event planning, how the end of year, summer, people coming from vacation, all that intelligence that you know where school break is, when it's not, when it snows, when it doesn't, when people like to go to New Jersey, when they don't. Nobody wants to go to New Jersey now. So we have our COT program, guess when? In July, when it's just gorgeous. Everybody wants to come to New Jersey where it's nice and fresh and beautiful. Communication plan, you want to have a unified one communication plan. It's not everybody sending texts and messages, but it's one unified message that you have. So usually you set a tagline in your mission. You have a tagline that says, the New Jersey Composting Council, we are your shop for composting. So that communication, we send it out to everybody, and you have to make sure that you manage your social media presence with that communication. Your Twitters, your LinkedIn, your Facebook. We use some Instagram, which is linked into Facebook, but we were not very good at that. We went to some training. The local nonprofit school gave us some training, and we became social media gurus. And so now we can set our paid campaigns with a communication plan that is consistent. And your communication plans are usually yearly. It's like a Chinese drop. You're sending a message every month so they remember, oh yeah, these guys are reminding me of the conference happening in July. You send one in April, you send one in May. And it's all kind of a consistent message, which you also piggyback and with other organizations like the USCC when they're doing their conference, and you message that alongside. But very important that the messaging is done through one person. Everybody can bring ideas, everybody can bring images, everybody can bring messages, but it is communicated through one channel only. So there it is, social media. The donut, I like donuts. This is where the donuts, here's the adventure of donut. Watch me eat a donut. My skills include a donut. Here's a donut. So this is a uniform message of what? Not composting. Okay, so coalition and partner building. I think this strategy has been very successful for us in creating strategy. When you're small, no money, solo, you just have to be able to be friends. Be friends with specific defined relationships. Don't sign anything, don't get cocooned into them, but have friends at the government agencies, be it the USDA's technical or the restoration group that has the state meetings. You have your private partnering with the municipalities, and where you bring a private, maybe manufacturer of a screener, and the municipality provides you their DPW, and you are the nonprofit helping out with the education. You do membership alliances. You definitely must talk with the higher education gurus of soil and of agriculture. We have Rutgers University. So we are like this with the agriculture research department at Rutgers, their climate change division and policy school. We meet with other associations. We are close to the New Jersey Recycling Association, but we're not together. So we're close with each other, but we're not together. We go do lobbying. We testify sometimes with the same mission, but sometimes we separate each other. Last month, something very peculiar happened. They called us up, Hira, you testifying with Bill SB 34. I said, sure I am, and I'm for it. Well, the bill says that they're gonna make it mandatory for county recyclers to have organics planning in their yearly solid waste plan. The recyclers don't want any mandates from the government. Is forget that. We're going to do it on our own time. We say, wait a minute. We're not. We've been waiting for 10, 15 years for you guys to do this. And therefore, we support the bill by Assemblyman Kennedy. And we were there. And at that moment, we separated our causes. 6 months ago, we did the plastic compliance content bill. And we were side by side, guess with who? With the Chemical Council of North America. Can you believe that? I mean, they're always on the other side of the aisle, fighting us alongside the other groups, non-environmental groups, and we are on this side. But this time we found ourselves, and thanks to that alliance, we were able to pass a bill that excluded compostables from being required, certain things in the state to be recycled in plastics mandate. And so it was a very successful alliance there with these associations. And with NJAR, with the Recycling Association, we've done many other ones, including the latest, and I'm going fast, guys, because I know my time is coming up. The food waste bill that we were successful last year to implement, it was done alongside organizations like Sierra, Clean Water, New Jersey Organics Recycling, and Rutgers University, and so forth. And there, I put the environmental nonprofits. Please stay in contact with them. You will see the usual suspects as you walk into the state capitol every time. They're all there in the front. The attorneys are on the other side, but make friends with these people, regardless of your program. It's very important. You will need their help. And then ultimately, your membership with the USCC. That's a very important strategy to ensure that you know who the members on the USCC are and how they can come to your state and play a role in helping you build infrastructure. And remember, they have one mission. They're looking for revenues, they're looking for opportunities, and they see your nonprofit, the extension of the USCC, as a bridge into the state. So keep that very much close to you as you're doing your strategy and partnering. Guys, these are some of the resources that I use. Look, there are so many rich, bored, tired attorneys out there who are willing to do pro bono work. They're wonderful people. We found them through the Association of Nonprofits. It's a national association. It's called Pro Bono State Association. I think New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Anytime I have a consultation, even on a bylaw that comes around, before I present to the board or argue to the board, I recommend you get these attorneys to provide you a statement, a position of what is good. So we have other organizations there. MPQ is great news. Gusto for all your payroll. It's very cheap. Do your training, your business, and so forth. And with that, I think I'm right on the money. Or did I pass myself? Oh, Jesus, I'm past. But there you are. So we are concluded. Thank you for listening to me. Do you have any comments or questions?
We had 2 questions come in through the chat. The first one is from Benjamin. He's asking, can you recommend an ideal membership tracking software? And are there any resources where nonprofits can get inexpensive or free, but still good software to help run the organization?
I haven't had that kind of resources available to me. We use the Microsoft Excel, and we create our own sheets. We monitor it on a monthly basis. We look at that sheet. We have a nice list. As I said, it's only 50 of us for the membership, so you can go up and down that list within 30 minutes. But no, I don't have something that rings a bell, kicks me in the head, because we'd nice to have a software that could do that, right? That reminds you, because sometimes you forget to look at your list and who is up for renewal and who is not. But there are databases out there that you can access and pay for. And I get constantly bombarded by these software houses. And unfortunately, I don't use those databases because I know my business. It's a very specific vertical. But I recommend you look at that and or run the Excel sheets as we do.
Is Dan Noble still on here? Because Dan could talk about Wild Apricot. He uses that.
Yeah, Dan has a big network.
Yeah.
State of California.
Yeah, we do use Wild Apricot, and it's a great software. It's not too expensive. I think we have the version where we pay $190 a month, so you have to have it in your budget. But all of our members and prospects are in there. It has an email program. It does your accounts payable and receivable, and you can accept payments through it. They have an AffiniPay program, so it's all good. And other big associations here locally in California use it as well, like the California Resource Recycling Association also uses it, so
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, these are, I mean, $200 a month for us is, I can't budget that yet, but thank you, Dan, for that point. I hope everybody gets to the problem that you have of managing these large databases and that size of state, but good stuff. So now the quiz. Let's put the quiz up there. So while I answer some of the questions, he said, could you please post it? All right, guys, here's the quiz. We're looking at you. No pressure.
The
Yeah,
link is in the chat.
We'll let you know tomorrow how you did.
Oh, you don't? Okay. You want me? Yeah. I was going to go through it, but if you time-wise.
Oh, I don't know if we can go. Can we go through it that fast? We can do that.
I think 5 to 10 minutes is good enough.
Because we are tracking who's here. We want to, so while you're doing that, I guess I should be quiet so you can think, but I'll wait for a minute and then explain what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's 5 questions. You know, it should take you 1 minute per question. You know the rule of those multiple questions. Your instinct, let your instinct take over. And when you're finished, put your head down on your desk. Yes, thank you, Linda. So in the meantime, do I have the questions? Yeah, I have the questions. Let me find them. Where did I put them?
I'll tell you what, when you finish, put your, if you can, put your camera on. That way we know when mostly everybody's finished and we can be quiet while you're reading.
So I'm going to bring the questions up on my screen. And I can help you. Is that how we should do it, Linda? We should bring them up to my screen and.
Yeah, but let's wait till most people finish them.
Yeah, I'm not gonna put the.
You're not giving the answers away.
No, I'm not giving the answers. I'm just getting the, if I can find them. Oh, here they are.
You could also put a thumbs up if you, although I don't know if that will stick, but if you don't want to turn your camera on, just so we know how it's going. I know some of us are still in our PJs, so. Thank you, Bob. So while a few of you are still finishing up, we're going to be sending the chapter presentations that happen at the conference next week to everybody, whether you were there or not. So that will be coming out to you, and we'll send this presentation, and hopefully Jairo will share his slides. We'll send those to you tomorrow. And what we're doing here is next year, I have in the budget to purchase wonderful classes like what Jairo just gave us in many areas of chapter development. We're going to start a chapter academy in the new learning management system that USCC is putting in. So what we're beginning is a chapter leader certification, and I'm not quite sure where the chapter advisory committee will want to go with that, but it may contribute to chapter awards or other things. So it's kind of cool to have a certification, and you also can use this towards your COCC or your, excuse me, CCOM or your CCP. So.
Okay, I think we should. They're done, right?
I think so. How many do we have in, Hessa? Most of them?
We have 19 answers. 19 out of 31. I think that's good. That's very good.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jairo, why don't you go
Okay,
through it?
so-
We'll see how everyone did.
So when does the 1023 easy form short versus a C3 qualify? So when revenues are more than 50K, no. When revenues of 50K over the first year, no. When revenues are under 50K, so when revenues of 50K over the first 3 years, that would be, sorry, not, is number B. So A wrong, C wrong, B. So A, B, and then number 2, 501c6 can provide tax exemption to donors. The correct answer is no. Number 3, which is A. Number 3 is, what is the required insurance for nonprofits when compensation is in place? The correct one is C, workers' comp only. However, it could be that the officers in some states. So this one, I'll leave it. If anybody wants to discuss this one, show proof of the state's requirement, it could be there. 4, when do you file an IRS 990 short form versus the long form? Yeah. When revenues are under 50K, so that's D. And what is the most important role of the nonprofit? Advocacy, membership activities, fundraising, business development, accounting, IRS compliance, all of the above. D. And that again is subject to interpretation now, and somebody might say, no, it's accounting and IRS compliance. But I think all of them are as important, and therefore D is the correct answer. All right, so hey guys, been great. Again, I hope I didn't confuse you. I hope it gave you just a little taste of some of my experience as a businessman and in the nonprofit space. And with that said, feel free to reach out to me. If you have a simple question, if it's a big question, I will send you an invoice. Thank you, Linda.
For coming today. Hopefully this is really helpful for your chapters.
I'm off the air, back. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Yura. That was helpful.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.